Hey, Church on the Rock family, Dan here. Intro for something Brad wants to share with us as a community. Very excited. He's been speaking into this with some of the leadership and the staff for months now. The Lord's been putting an invitation and a burden on his heart for where our church community is going to be going in the fall. So pay close attention to the stuff that God has been highlighting that we believe is going to radically bring kingdom into our community.
So for me, one of the things, a scripture in Romans 12 is do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed. And I feel like the area of finance in particular is an area that a lot of believers don't really seem to see the connection. And Jesus is really clear. Like, he's like, man, you can't serve two masters. You can either serve God or you can serve money. And I think that inside of every believer, there's a generosity in their heart. But because of the world system and debt and all of these things, I think a lot of people really don't have the ability to live generously because they find themselves kind of caught up to their eyeballs in debt, paycheck to paycheck, and then you begin to lose hope. And so you don't even want to talk about it. You don't want to deal with it. There's a level of shame involved. And so it's easier just to bury our heads in the sand and kind of hope that things work out or hope that we win the lottery. And so I've had this burden to see believers in particular live free of financial burden so that we can learn to live a lot more generous life, and so steward what God has given us in a better way. So a few of the things about Ramsey or financial peace, I think they're pretty interchangeable. Everybody's familiar with the term Ramsey. But I think for me, some of the negatives that kind of prevented me from ever even wanting to go through the courses, if I'm honest, were just that I assumed that he wanted everyone to live just super tight and, thrifty, and there's no generosity, and it becomes like you become a greedy miser. That was one of the thoughts that I had in my mind when I heard the name Ramsey, is that it caused people not to live generously, but actually go the other way, and it becomes all about self-gain and, all of that. I've been shocked to hear his language of how cool would it be if you were able to buy someone in need a new car, to provide for their needs. So everything that I thought I knew about Ramsey without knowing anything has been completely shattered. And I've learned that he actually does this to enable people to live radically generous in their lives. So that's one of the things, is that I assumed that it just meant that we would become very thrifty and very stingy in our lives, and that is absolutely not the case. That is not the truth at all. He promotes getting free so that we actually have the ability to live generously. I didn't really know what it would look like for a whole church community to get set free in that area, to live free. And so all of a sudden, this whole financial piece, these ideas came up that we could do this. It's actually designed for an entire church to walk through. And I immediately witnessed with me, because it's like, man, how cool would it be if we can actually walk this arm to arm, linked up, going, hey, let's celebrate our areas of victory in this and not have shame associated anymore. And then let's actually encourage one another. There's hope, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Let's celebrate victories as we go. And so for me, the idea of doing it together as a faith, as a church family, I think it couldn't get any better than that, because then we can all celebrate victories one with another. And so what we're hoping to see, honestly, is in the fall, we want every single person in our church to go through it. And I'm really excited. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter. We're going to make provision for our youth to go through it as well. In fact, I think if we can, this is an area that school's not teaching. And so if this is an area where we can help our youth to establish good patterns, they're going to be able to start living generously immediately. And so we're going to have every possible time available pretty much, so that everyone's schedules is going to be able to find a spot where they can fit in, they can jump in and go through momentum. But in order to do that, we need to get people volunteering to be table leads in the fall. And so what it'll look like in the fall, we'll have all these different nights. You don't have to be the teacher. We have people that are leading the class and walking through the video, but then we're going to break down into smaller groups at tables. And so we need people just to facilitate conversation at those tables. And so we're looking for people that are willing to be those table leads. And if that's you, we want you to actually go through financial peace in advance of the fall classes. So you're familiar, you know the language, you understand how it works. Yeah, so maybe, for you, your parents taught you finances really well. You never got in debt. It's never been an issue for you. And you're thinking, hey, that's for a lot of people. I get it. I'm glad they're doing it as a church, but that's not really for me. I want to just talk about that for a minute, because what I want to encourage you with is, what if it's not just about you for a minute? Like, what if it's actually about learning some tools to continue to equip and to teach your own kids or others who are in debt, because the reality is we know this is a huge problem in our nation. And so I want to encourage you, if that's you and you go, my finances, sure, I could tighten a few things up, but it's not really an issue for me. This whole financial piece isn't really my jam. I want to challenge you. For one, we want to see our whole church do it. So come support those that are going through it. But also, I promise you, you're going to learn some tips and some secrets and some ways that you're going to be able to help and equip others to get out of debt and to encourage them on this journey. And so we just want to see every person, whether you have no financial issues, whether you think your financial issues are so ginormous that you'll never overcome. This is what families do. Families come together and they support one another. And so if that's you, I want to speak to you for just a minute. I want you to sign up. I want you to get to the class. You should probably be one of the ones that signs up and becomes a table lead in the fall as we do this as a church community.